Hello, my name is Desiree Elias. I'm the Assistant Controller at FIU. I welcome you to the Budgeting 101 presentation, FIU's Budget Basics. Today specifically, this section covers fund accounting at FIU, one of the topics in the accounting review section. Further topics will give us insight into specific revenue, expense, and cash transfer concepts, and we will eventually do an accounting example. But for now, let's start with basic fund accounting concepts at FIU. Before we talk about fund accounting, let's step back and just talk about accounting in general. Accounting is a systematic way to identify, to measure, and to communicate the economic or financial impact of events, such as activities that generate inflows and outflows to the organization being FIU. Accounting is a self-balancing process. It's going to measure two things: financial performance and financial position. Let's talk about financial performance first. Financial performance basically represents the operations of an activity or a unit. How did that unit or activity do? How we do that is for a specific period, for a period of time. It could be a month, it could be a quarter, it could be a year. It is never going to be longer than a year. At FIU, our fiscal year is from July 1st to June 30th of every year. Now, we refer to net financial performance as income. Positive components, such as inflows, are called revenues. Negative components, such as outflows, are called expenses. The net of those two, meaning revenues less expenses, gives us our net income. Let's talk about the other side now, financial position. Financial position are the resulting balances of these events or activities that we measure on a cumulative basis. We go accumulating those balances, and we report it as of a certain date. Financial performance is for a period of time, while financial position is on a specific date. For example, the end of the month or the end of the year. Within financial performance, we have two types of balances. Positive balances are assets. The distinguishing characteristics of assets is that they provide future economic benefits. Cash, for example, is an asset. Receivables from students are assets. They will provide us benefits in the future. Negative balances are liabilities. These represent future obligations or commitments that the organization has, that FIU has. A good example of this would be accounts payable. If we owe a vendor some money for an invoice that is not due yet, that is considered a future obligation to us. We're going to be using our assets in the future to pay off our liabilities. Let's talk about an example here. FIU provides educational services to students. That is our main mission. Remember, two sides to accounting. Let's talk about them. Financial performance. The university hires faculty to render our students educational services. When those services are rendered, the university earned revenues. However, we owe the faculty payment for their services that allowed us to earn revenue. Those are called expenses. Again, revenues and expenses. Now, financial position, let's talk about that. The university collects the cash from the student and pays cash to the professor. So we have cash coming in from the student, cash going out to pay for the faculty, amongst other costs, of course. This results in a net positive cash balance. That is an asset because, again, it has future economic benefit. And we measure that at any given date, at the end of a period, at a specific date. Let's talk specifically now about accounting at FIU. FIU is a governmental agency. Governmental agencies or entities use fund accounting, which is a little bit different than what you might find in a private organization or a corporation. The main focus for fund accounting is fiscal accountability of financial resources in compliance with legal requirements. What does that mean? Basically, it means how much money have we spent and what do we have left to spend based on a budget. We are given a budget, or we compile a budget every year, and that budget is approved by the state of Florida, by our Board of Trustees, and ultimately by the state of Florida. We then have to track how we're doing against that budget. However, the focus here is more of resources. How much of that budget has actually been spent? In fund accounting, certain events or activities are recognized either when cash is received or paid, more on a cash basis, or when the events occur regardless of when the cash is received or paid. This is an accrual basis. Accrual basis matches the expenses to provide services with the revenues generated from providing those services during the same period. We will talk a little bit more about accrual basis in the next section of this accounting review presentation. Why is it called fund accounting, though? General activities are segregated by funding sources. So depending on where the money comes from, we have to track that money and the uses of that money separately. Each fund is restricted in its uses by statute. These are actual laws and rules. And each fund separately is allocated a budget. Currently, within each fund, activities are further segregated here at FIU by organizations and departments that identify which unit or college is responsible for performing specific activities. For example, the School of Engineering puts on a conference, or the College of Engineering puts on a conference. Engineering is the unit, the conference is a specific activity. Let's talk about some of the funds that we have at FIU. We have several. The first one that comes to mind is ENG, Educational and General. This includes funds for instruction, such as faculty costs, academic support, such as advising, general and administrative activities, such as UTS, legal, HR activities, and plant operations and maintenance, space costs, utilities, janitorial. Sources of these funds are appropriated from several sources. Students pay tuition, but apart from that, the state gives us or forwards to us revenues from taxes, lottery funds, and other sources. ENG funds are highly restricted. There are a lot of rules about what you can spend these funds on. Our next category is auxiliary enterprises. Auxiliary enterprises, goods and services that are provided primarily to benefit students, faculty, and staff. Even though you can sell or provide services, goods or services to the general public as well, incidentally. They're managed as self-supporting activities, very important, through fees that they charge their customers for products or services. An example here is the parking activities, housing, all of the retail activities that we have. The main characteristic here with auxiliaries is that they have to be self-supporting, meaning you have to recover whatever the costs are. If not, you have to question whether you should actually be doing the activity. Our third category is contracts and grants. Contracts and grants support research, public service, and training. And the funding sources here comes from awards that we earn on grants, contracts, other types of agreements from federal, state, or local governmental agencies. This is mostly our research efforts. We can also receive funds from corporations and individuals as well for research. These are also highly restricted funds. Agencies. Agencies are monies that we hold acting as a custodian or fiscal agent for an external organization. That is important to note, external. These funds are deposited with us for safekeeping. They're used, but ultimately it is a liability back to the external party. And we might be holding these funds on behalf of certain students, student groups, for example, student organizations, or other third parties. Again, these agency funds are really liabilities. The money doesn't belong to FIU. The money belongs to someone else. Again, highly restricted, because we need to account for it as a liability in case we're ever asked to return the money. Financial aid and scholarships provides financial assistance for our students. In some cases, the university is holding money on behalf of private donors or on behalf of state and federal agencies. So a lot of the scholarships, such as the Pell Grants, are flow-throughs, meaning we are given the money by the government and we apply that money to the student accounts. So it's just money that comes in and then money that comes out. It's a flow-through. It's used specifically only for that. And those monies really are not ours either to keep. We have a liability to apply those monies to the student receivables. In other cases, the institution ourselves manages our financial aid. We collect a financial aid fee, or we get certain other funds and we manage it internally. Ultimately, though, these funds do go to students. Student-related activities funded by non-tuition student fees. Examples here would be campus life and career services, athletics, the technology fee that we charge our students. These are highly restricted, again, highly restricted fees. When we do receive these fees, for example, a technology fee, there's a list of things that we can use this money for. We cannot use it for other purposes. Highly restricted. Concessions. Concessions is at the bottom of this list right now. Concessions is income from vending operations, and it is less restricted. This is probably the least restricted type of funds that we have. So all the money that we earn from the vending operations across the university, there's a lot more flexibility in what we can spend those monies on. Finally, there's some other entities that are affiliated to the university. These are called DSOs, which are direct support organizations. They are non-for-profit entities. They are not governmental in nature. They are not part of FIU as a governmental agency. They're separate non-for-profit organizations. They are created to support specific activities of the university. Examples here are the Healthcare Network, Athletics Financing Corporation, and the Research Foundation. Many of you may not have heard of these organizations. You may not work with them, but they do exist. However, the largest DSO, the FIU Foundation, that is something you might have heard of. The FIU Foundation administers our donations for the purposes of advancement of FIU. As you can see, there are many, many funding sources. Sometimes an activity might actually be funded from many sources, and you have to track and account for it separately. It becomes a challenge, but that is a challenge of governmental accounting. That is the end of this section. In the next section, we'll be talking a little bit more about revenues, expenses, and cash transfer concepts that will allow us to get an even better understanding of accounting at FIU. Thank you for your time.